and share the screen with you.
Good.
Can everyone see that? Zoom in more.
Zoom in more.
No more, yeah. That's good.
Okay. So we are this week reading the double parsha of Nitzavim-Vayelech. It's a little bit misleading because it's shorter than most single parshiot, the two of them combined. My brother got real lucky. This is his bar mitzvah parsha, and he had only Nitzavim. So he had a real easy bar mitzvah preparation. And as we say every year, it's a very short parsha, but it has incredible, some really incredible stuff in it. And it's always read this time of the year. I mean, depending on whether it's combined or whatever, it's either the Shabbos immediately before Rosh Hashanah, as we said, because even though in Parshat Kitavo we have the Tochacha, and we say that we should read about all the curses and be rid of them before the end of the year, we want to create a little bit of a buffer between the curses and the new year, so we have at least Parshat Nitzavim always in between, and then depending on the calendar, it either will be Vayelech now or Vayelech for Shabbos Shuvah. We're going to look. It's this is a passage that on the surface seems quite powerful, but then as I was thinking about it, I realized I don't really understand what it's talking about, and so I'm going to delve into a little bit of the commentators on it, and then see what I thought was a really remarkable connection to a story earlier in Chumash that I think is familiar to most of us. So the section we're going to focus on is here beginning in Pasuk Yud Zayin 17. Pen yesh bachem ish o isha o mishpacha o shevet asher levavo foneh hayom me'im Hashem Elokeinu v'alachet la'avod et Elohei hagoyim hayu pen yesh bachem shoresh porerosh v'la'ana. Lest or perchance there be among you a man or a woman, a family or a tribe whose heart turns away from God to go and serve other gods. Perhaps there is among you a stock sprouting poison weed and wormwood. V'haya b'sham'o et divrei ha'Allah hazot v'yitbarich bilvavo lemor shalom yali ki b'shvivut libi elech l'man tzvot haravat atzmeah. And he hears the words of this covenant, he will bless himself in his heart, saying, I will have peace upon me, because I follow the statutes of my heart. And then this phrase is really impossible to translate. Leman sifot harava et hatzmeah. I'll just read what the English here says. To the utter ruin of moist and dry alike. I don't like that translation at all. But to the utter ruin of moist and dry alike. Lo yoveh Hashem saloach lo ki az yashan af Hashem v'kinato ba'ishahu v'ravtza bo kol ha'ala k'tuva b'sefer hazeh u'macha Hashem et shmo mitachat hashamayim. Hashem will not forgive him. The wrath of God will burn furiously against this person, and all of the promises of this covenant will come to get him, and God will wipe him out from under the heavens. V'hivdilo Hashem l'ra'a mikol shiftei Yisrael. God will separate him out for bad from amongst all the tribes of Israel. Just as the covenant in the Torah says that will happen to them.
Excuse me, 1 second.
Yeah.
There's chirping going on. That comes through somebody's connection. Just infrequent, but chirp, 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 chirp. Okay.
Okay. I don't hear chirping, but I can
I hear it.
we can try to mute everybody.
It's coming actually, Rabbi Kaplan, from you. When you speak, we hear it.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Do you hear it now?
No.
No.
Okay.
Well,
I'm the chirper.
yeah,
All right, let's try it again.
Yeah.
there it's
Oh, there it is. Getting some kind of feedback.
feedback.
I don't know what to do. I can't mute myself.
Don't try.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Let's tell me if it gets any better or worse.
Okay.
Okay. I forget what we were up to. V'amar
Past-
hador acharon b'nechem asher yakumu me'acharechem v'anochi asher yavo me'eretz rechoka v'aru ma'kot ha'aretz ahi v'tachaleh asher chila Hashem ba. So the last generation, your sons who will rise after them, and the stranger who will come to your land from far away, and they will see the punishment of the land, or the way the land was stricken, and all that God has brought against it. Gofrit v'melach sreifa kol arza, lo tizarav lo tatzmiach, v'lo yaleh ba kol esev kimahapechat Sodom v'Amorah, adma utzvoyim asher afach Hashem be'apo v'chamato. They'll say that the land is Gofrit v'melach, soil devastated by sulfur and salt. It's all been burnt. It cannot be planted, and it will not give forth any produce or any grass, just like what happened to Sodom and Amorah when God brought his wrath against them. They'll say, why did God do this? They'll say it's because they abandoned the covenant that God made with them when he took them out of Egypt. They went and they worshipped foreign gods. God got angry at the land and brought all the curse that is described in this book. And God exiled them from the land with great anger, and he sent them to a different land. The hidden is for God, and that which is revealed is for us and for our children forever, to do all the words of the Torah, of this Torah. Okay, so we have a pretty vivid description of the horrors of the punishment that will befall us if we fail to follow in the Torah. Does anything catch your interest? Any questions you have on this passage before we dive into it?
What is it that this person did that was
Looks like
so
we gotta-
bad?
Yeah, what did this person do that's so horrible, right? So we have references to idolatry. And so certainly idolatry is one of the big sins that could lead, that we wouldn't be surprised to lead to such punishment. But it seems to be even more harsh than other times we encounter idolatry. So why is it so horrible in this instance?
We seem to be privy to his thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and his thoughts seem to exonerate him from something.
Okay, so he at the beginning, he says, when he hears this covenant, v'hit barich bil vavo, he will bless himself in his heart, saying, I will have peace, because I follow the virtues of my heart. And then we have this horrible translation of how did it translate it? The moist and the dry alike, to the utter ruin of the moist and the dry alike. And so we have some insight into the psychology of this sinner, right? He's committing idolatry, and he has an attitude of nothing bad is going to happen to me. I'm a good guy.
The Kli Yakar offers the translation, I will proceed according to the perversity of my heart.
Okay.
Rabbi Cantor chose that particular word from what the Kli Yakar had said.
Okay.
So that's a little bit stronger in that regard, but still you have those last three words, and they certainly are difficult to translate.
Yeah.
I agree with you entirely. I think Rabbi Hirsch has a lovely way of working with this, kind of in a simple way. He points to the last two words and says that one of them refers to like an overflowing cup of rava, and the other to someone who has an incredible thirst, or the land itself has an incredible thirst. And then Rabbi Cantor comes back and says, yes, there is a deep, deep longing and thirst inside every person. And for those who can do the mitzvahs that way, that's good. But those who don't, find a way of doing it in an entirely perverse way. So it's talking about that kind of level of intense inner drive. Okay, something like that, you know. So I just thought I'd offer that to you because there have been some pretty good translations of it, I think. I did happen to check these things out because Rocha asked me these questions on Shabbos. We studied this pasuk on Shabbos.
Nice. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's go a little bit into some of the commentators, starting with Rashi. V'hitbarich bilvavo, he will bless himself in his heart. Lashon bracha, yachshov bilibo, birkat shalom latzmo, lemor lo yivuuni kolot halalu, ach shalom yali. He'll bless himself in his heart, saying, these curses won't happen to me, I'll have all peace. And then we could skip this next ancient French and go to where it says Gimel, Bishrivut-Vayelech, where in number 3, in the views of my heart will I walk. Bimar'itz libi, right? So that's where the views of my heart. Kmo asherenav lo karov, klomar mashali biro elaso. Whatever my heart sees fit to do is what I will do. Liman sifot harava. Here it says to add drunkenness to the thirst. Lefisha osif lo por aniot al masha asa ad hena b'shogeg. Vayiti mavir alehem v'gorem atasha afartzim im hamezid. Right, so Rashi's saying that it's God saying that I will add on to the punishment. Someone who has such an attitude that they're immune from punishment will actually be punished even more harshly. Right, so sifot harava et hatzmeya, that it will be added on to that which is already coming to him. That's what Rashi says. The Ramban begins by saying, right, the section begins, Pen yesh bachem ish o isha o mishpacha o shevet, right, lest there be a man or a woman, a family or a tribe, says, Hizkir yechidim u mishpacha v'shevet shehu am rav, lo amar al kulam derech kavod. So he says, why does it focus on these individuals or these smaller groups? And it doesn't say the entire nation. One reason might be just for kavod, to show honor, respect to the Jewish people, that we don't want to ever accuse the entire nation of committing these horrible offenses. Oh, or possibly he says, shelo yitachin she'alev kulam poneh hayom la'avodah zarah. It's not possible that the entire nation at one time will turn to idolatry. Because if it were the case that the entire nation would follow idolatry, they never would enter into the covenants in the first place. But a smaller subset, a family, a tribe, they may enter into the covenant out of fear of the majority. Right? Peer pressure. They don't really buy into it, but they feel the need to follow along with everyone else. V'amar pen yesh bachem, right? It says, lest there be amongst you, asher levavo poneh hayom, al hanifta kvar lavoda zara. Right? So this refers to someone who's already sort of attracted to idolatry. V'hu b'libo ma'amin ba hayom hazeh. O pen yesh bachem shoresh, right? So it could be referring to someone who already is an idolater, or it might be yesh bachem shoresh ra. There's someone who has a bad root. Sheifrach v'ishgeh ubayamim habaim yotzi prachim ra'im. Right now, it's just the root. It's just the stirring. It's just the beginning of these idolatrous tendencies. But in a little while, they'll give forth to bad flowers, and it will be horrible. V'zeh asher inenu po imanu hayom. That refers to those who are not here with us today. Okay, we can skip the rest of this Ramban and go. I think we have another section from the Ramban on the next page. Explaining why this person feels that they're not going to be punished. V'itbarech bilvavo, leimor, kisheyishma acherim mitkalolim ba'alot ha'ela, v'itbarech b'machshavato. When he hears that others are cursed with these punishments, he'll bless himself in his own thoughts. V'yomer belibo, shalom yali mikol ela, ka'asher elech b'ta'avat libi. Right, and he'll bless himself and say, "I'll have peace when I follow after the inklings of my own heart." Hashem lo yislach lo, God will not forgive him. Aval yeshan alav apo, but God will bring his anger against this person. Az k'sheyechteh ledor oledorot oye ta'am, right? When this person eventually comes to act out on his sins. Oye ta'am ki, or we might translate it as follows: Lemor li yeli shalom ba'avor she'ineni mekabel alai hashvua. Person thinks, I'll have peace because I don't accept this oath. Ki b'shirut li b'elech. I follow after my own heart. Meaning, this person thinks, if I don't accept Torah, if I don't accept the truth of Judaism, then I can't be subject to its punishments. And the answer that Moshe is giving is that's not true. Even if you don't buy into it, right, by virtue of the fact of who you are, being born into the Jewish people, you're still bound by it. So don't think that it's dependent on the person's it's only these punishments are only for someone who buy into the system. That's what the Ramban is saying. Any questions on the Ramban?
Given what happened in Spain and everything, I mean, oh boy, this is just a tremendously relevant thing for our century as well. And wow.
Yeah, and it's interesting if we move forward. So the next few commentators are more modern, right? 19th, 20th century. So the Akedat Yitzchak, I couldn't get a Hebrew version digital from the Akedat Yitzchak, so I apologize, it's only in the English. Let me just show you the English. He deludes himself with the arguments. Hashem only destroys and punishes those who acknowledge the Torah but neglect it in its observance. I shall have peace, and need therefore have no fear of the curse befalling me. For I walk in the stubbornness of my heart to repudiate the whole basis of the Torah. And should you say that misfortune will overtake me, surely I dwell in the midst of my people, and I am bound to share the same bounty and guardianship which Hashem deals out to my fellow Jews. So two things. Number one, very similar to the Ramban, the Akedat Yitzchak is saying that the person has the attitude that only those who buy into the system are subject to its ramifications. And that's being refuted, that's being rejected. Then the Akedat Yitzchak adds on and says, and even if I would be subject to the punishments despite not believing, well, then I can rely on the fact that the majority of the Jewish people do believe. And since the majority do believe, I'll sort of be considered among the majority, right? He's a free rider. He's not going to pay for his ticket, but he's gonna be protected by the merit of the rest of the nation. And so that also is rejected. No, each person will be held accountable for their own actions. And you can't just go ahead and and think that that you'll be saved. And he says this is the this is the whole dry and wet, thirsty, however we're translating Ravota Haravat Atzmeah. This is the meaning of the watered shall be added to the dry. A person who has two adjoining fields, one thirsty, always needing water, and the other watered, always having enough. The thirsty or dry field is bound to get the benefit of the watering of the adjoining field, even if the farmer does not intend to water the thirsty or dry field. This heretic thought similarly, though Hashem may not intend to bless me with the bounty of his blessings, he must receive them, or I will receive them willy-nilly, enjoy them as part of the community which receives them. The phrase, I shall have peace, implies two things. One, excluding himself from the community in respect of entering into the covenant and curses, and two, saving him from the retribution because he is part of the community. Okay, so such an attitude is what's being rejected here. And of Mecklenburg, the Kitab and Kabbalah also says, this refers to the person who is thoroughly corrupt in fundamentals. When he hears the words of this curse, he will say, truthfully, there are many people which mystify me, which cause me nothing but struggle and heart-searching. I observe them only sporadically, because they are irrational, and I am unable to grasp their logic. Therefore, I shall only observe those things that appeal to my reason or what my intellect will accept. In this way, without inner struggle, I shall have peace. Ki bishiru shalom yali, I'll have peace because I'm going to turn this religion, this set of laws, into something totally rational, into something that totally makes sense to me and something which resonates with me. If I do that, then I'll have peace because I won't be bothered by seeming logical inconsistencies, by seeming ethical dilemmas. I'll have none of that. Everything will be easy. And he's saying that that is what's being rejected. You can't have, right? This is very similar to anyone who has read or heard anyone talk about Rabbi Soloveitchik's Halachic Man. One of the most often quoted passages from Halachic Man is actually one of the footnotes. Footnote number 4. It goes on for pages and pages and pages. And Rabbi Soloveitchik basically says that there's this idea that exists that religion is the opiate for the masses, is supposed to make people feel good. He says that's a totally wrong assumption, that Judaism is not about feeling good or being easy or placating people. It's about really being challenged and having to do very difficult things. And so the Kitab and Kabbalah was offering a similar psychological approach to the sinner, and just like Rabbi Soloveitchik says, that's not what Judaism advocates for. Right? It's not only about feeling good and things that are easy, but even if things are logically inconsistent, even if they're challenging, nonetheless, we're still bound to follow Torah and mitzvot, or perhaps especially in that case. And just to round it out, the Nitziv in the Ha'amek Davar says the metaphor of a root that bears gall and wormwood does not refer to a person who worships idols, but even more corruptly and bitterly chooses not to worship anything at all. He rejects totally the idea that there is justice and divine providence, for he believes that man is no more than an animal who is to follow the urgings of his heart. unlike the person who worships idols in order to satiate his lusts, he does not force his beliefs on others. The person who bears such corrupt ideas cannot help but attempt to spread his vile heresies to justify his own behavior. Right. So speaking very much of his time, says that the biggest danger and what the mindset of the sinner is not necessarily of idolatry or worshiping the wrong religion, but is about atheism and rejection of all religion. Any thoughts on any of these Mefarshim that we've seen so far? Reactions, questions?
It's very powerful.
Yeah, it is very powerful.
And there's so many people today that describes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
After thinking about this for a while, I just like to offer one more thought, if I may, from Rabbi Cantor. The reason this is so important is, I think, because he says, because we really take it for granted, I guess, in a way, but in a good way, that anyone who keeps a mitzvah is doing it. I'm not saying they're doing it with a huge number of kavanas or anything like that, just that they are doing it because they think it's the right thing to do. Whether they understand it or not, whether it's easy or not, but that it's something that that God is telling them to do, and they're doing it. But we can't know what is in their minds. So just like we say our words are so important that we even have, kol nidre on Yom Kippur to undo something that we promised that we can't follow through on, or whatever that's all about. Even more so, it's like a kal v'chomer almost. The internal thoughts, we are presuming with one another that there are good intentions of some sort when people do mitzvahs. And this person is undercutting all of that.
Uh-huh.
And that's why this is such a serious matter. What do you think?
Interesting. Thank you.
That fits in a little bit more
Yeah,
than
it's a beautiful
whether a person
connection.
is an atheist or not, or whether they're this or that, or all these other recent things. There's a more fundamental problem than that.
Right. So the question, right, which we won't spend too much time with it, but source number 8, Rabbi Yaakov Beasley, who was a teacher of mine already a long time ago, says, right, that as we work our way through, we can see how each one of these commentators is really dealing with the major challenges of their day and age.
Mhm.
And so I guess the challenge, or the follow-up to your insight, Anne, is, well, what is the challenge of our day and age, and how does that fit into these verses? Right? Is it atheism? Is it something else? So that's an interesting question. I wanted to switch gears a little bit, unless there's any more comments on what we've seen so far.
So my question is, from all the commentators, what are they saying is worse? Worshipping idols, turning away from Hashem and worshiping idols, or not doing anything, or spreading your beliefs, your false beliefs, to others? There's like 3 different concepts within all of this.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting question. What's seen as the worst? I think what's being added here, right? When Anne said, what did this guy do that's so horrible? We have other instances of descriptions of what's going to happen for bad practice, for idolatry, for immoral behavior. Right? So I think, like, the point that's being made here is that Moshe is emphasizing everyone is part of the covenant, right? Everyone is part of this brit, of this covenant with God, right? Those who are here, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem, everyone, right? From the lowest of the low to the most exalted, those who are physically here, those who are not here are also bound by it. And so it seems that what might be going on is is the rejection of being bound by the covenant, right? Whether that's expressed by, right? So yeah, we can say, okay, someone who feels not bound by the covenant, so therefore they're going to go and eat a cheeseburger. It's not great, but maybe we could say that's not quite as bad as going and therefore bowing down to the local idol or whatever. But I think that's what's being addressed is both the idea of not being bound or feeling that you're not bound, and then also this imagery we have of the bad roots, of spreading that to others. So I don't know, it's hard to say which is worse. It's all bad. It's definitely all bad. That we can agree on for sure. But what's I think is being added to this conversation is that mindset of not being bound by it and the dangers that may have with others, the impact that might have. Okay, so in the course of the description, I can go back and show it to you again. It says in verse number 22. I'll read the Hebrew, you can follow in the English. Gafrit v'melach sreifa kol arza, lo tizara, v'lo tatzmiach, v'lo ya'ale ba kol esev, kimahapechat Sidom va'amora adma utzvoyim, asher hafach Hashem ba'apo uv'chamato. All its soil devastated by sulfur and salt, beyond sowing and producing, no grass growing in it, just like the upheaval of Sodom and Amorah, Admah and Sforim, which Hashem overthrew in fierce anger. Why the comparison to Sodom v'Amorah? What does that have to do with anything?
I mean, they were also not following, Hashem's laws. They were doing all kinds of bad things.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, they were doing all sorts of bad things. But again, we have many instances in the Torah where sin is described, where punishment is described. This is the only time where we reference back to Sodom v'Amorah. So what's unique about this instance that we should make that allusion and think about what happened so many generations previously?
They always had a ready rationalization for everything they did.
Okay.
And this guy does too.
Okay. So this guy, right? So they have a rationalization, right? We talk in the Gemara about midat stom, about the attribute of stom. So some say that they were just such horrible people, but some say what it means is they would steal from people, but such they would just steal pennies from people. So they wouldn't be technically have done enough of a crime to be held accountable, but they were so committed to a life of crime that they would do these little petty things that of course all add up. So maybe that's it. I heard another suggestion and I wanted to share that with you. And that is, right, the story of Sodom really begins well, actually, a few weeks ago, we saw the story of Sodom begins with Egypt, right? With that Lot chose Sodom because it was like Egypt, that it was readily watered by the river, not dependent on rain. But when we think of Sodom, we think of course, the negotiations that Abraham does on behalf of the people of Sodom. So that's in source number 9. And someone please tell me when I need to scroll down in the English. Hashem amar mechaseni me Avraham asher ani oseh. God said, can I hide from Avraham that which I'm about to do? Avraham hayo yeh legoy gadol atzum v'nivrechu bo kol goyei haaretz. Avraham will become a great nation and everyone will be blessed because of him. Ki dativ leman asher yitzavet banav et beito acharav v'sharmu derech Hashem. Lasot staka mishpat l'man havi Hashem al Avraham et asher diber alav. I know that he will do great things and bring others after him, follow in his ways to do tzedakah and justice, in order to bring that all I will bring to him all that I promised. Vayomer Hashem. So God says, Zakat Sodom va'Amorah ki rabah v'chatatam ki chavda me'od. The cry of, or the evilness of Sodom and Amorah is great, and their sin is very heavy. Erdana ve'ereh hakitzakatam haba elai asu kala ve'imlo eda'a. I'll go down and I'll see if they're, again, very hard to translate. If their call out to me is what they have in fact done, I will destroy them, and if not, I will know. Don't worry, we're not going to focus on that pasuk. So now the angels depart. Avram still standing before God. Avram approaches and he says, will you bring to an end the righteous with the wicked? Perhaps there are 50 righteous people in the city. Will you destroy it and not spare the city if there are 50 people living among them? Right? It is beyond you, or God forbid that you should do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, that they should have the same fate. Will the judge of all the land not do justice? So God says, okay, if there's 50, I won't destroy the city. So then Avram, of course, goes down to 30, to 40, to 30, and then he asks for 10. Right? So anything strike you in reading this introduction to the story of the destruction of Sodom?
It's the concept of a shared fate in a way, or shared experience with the righteous with. And
Okay.
So
Okay, so
echoes the other
there's the
problem.
question of we've said that the wicked can't expect to survive on the coattails or the merit of the righteous. So similarly, Avram saying the righteous should not, it's not fair that the righteous should be punished because of the wicked. So there's both stories definitely talk about this sort of collective destiny. So there's an interesting linguistic connection, right? Avraham says, Ha'af tispeh tzadik im rasha, verse 23. Will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? And that verb tispeh, sifot, appears many times in this passage. Remember that verse we couldn't translate in our parsha?
Right, it's got it too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got that same thing. Liman sifot haravat hatzmeah, that the dry be swept away or subsumed with the wet. However we translate it, it's the same verb. So that in itself is quite interesting, that we have this linguistic connection between these two. Why does Avraham think that God would spare the city if there's 50 people there? If the argument is, as Anne says, that it's not fair for the righteous to be punished with the wicked, so instead of just having Lot's family run away, have the 50 people run away. But if you're in a city of, I don't know how big the cities of Sodom and Amorah were, but let's assume there's at least a few hundred people, if it's big enough to be called a city. Right? Why should all these sinners be spared just because there's 50 people that are not sinners?
How are you going to punish the sinners if without harming the people who are not sinners?
Right, so they could run away, right? Instead of having the angels just save Lot, they could save all 50 righteous tzaddikim.
Maybe the righteous people could influence the not righteous people if they stick around.
So that's how most understand it. That if there's a core of righteous people, right? And some say that's why Avram ends at 10, because a 10 is a minyan. right? And that's like sort of the most basic group to exert its influence over others. So many say that it's, if there is a core, then there's hope that they will influence those around them. One of my favorite comments in all of Chumash is from Rav Hirsch on this very point. It's the final source in our pack. Rav Hirsch points that Abraham says, maybe there are 50 righteous within the city. So Rav Hirsch says, Abraham's righteous man, the tzaddik, is to be found bitoch ha'ir, in the midst of the city. What does it mean, bitoch ha'ir? In lively connection with everything and everybody. He never leaves off admonishing, teaching, warning, bettering wherever and however he can. He takes everybody and everything to heart. He never despairs, is never tired of trying, however distant the hopes of success may be. Right? The righteous person, righteous people, are people that are trying to exert their influence over the sinners. Right? We could add to that the fact that there is a community of righteous people shows that to some level they're tolerated. Right? Lot and his family weren't destroyed. Once the guests come and the angels come, it's a little bit of a different story. But Lot was able to live in Sodom as a righteous person with his family, and they were tolerated, right? So the existence of a core group, however big that is going to be, or however small, the smallest it could be, can exert its influence on others. Just a sidetrack, because in this shir I was listening to, they made a really fascinating observation, which is Abraham stops at 10. And I just said that perhaps he stops at 10 because that's the smallest group that we would expect to be able to exert its influence on others, or perhaps you need some support system among yourself. So a minyan would seem to be that smallest group. Interesting though, if we look in the next parak, in parak Yud Tet, describing what's happening in Sodom, this is just the highlights of it. But so remember, Lot brings these guests to his house, and the entire city surrounds him, says, "Bring them out. We're gonna do bad, horrible things to these people." And Lot says, "Achai al tareu." He says, "Don't be so mean. Don't be so bad." Hine na li shtei banot asher lo yadu ish otzia na eten alechem v'asu lahen katov einechem. It's horrible. But Lot offers up his 2 daughters to the city instead of the guests. Right? It's an impossible choice to make, but why he would offer up his 2 daughters is beyond anyone. And then if we look a few psukim later, after right. As they're bringing the blindness and the fire and the brimstone to the city, the angels turn to Lot and they say, "Vayomer anashim el Lot, od milecha po." Who else do you have here? Chatan uvanecha uvnotecha v'chol asher lecha ba'ir hotzei el hamakom. You have sons-in-laws or children's-in-laws. You have sons. You have daughters. So Lot's family consists of Lot and his wife, Banecha, multiple sons, so 2 sons, Benotecha, 2 daughters, with their spouses. That brings us to 8, and then the 2 single daughters, 10. When Avram stops at 10, maybe it wasn't about a minyan, but it was about Lot's immediate family. That's who he was.
Oh,
That's cute.
I never heard that.
Yeah. I was blown away by that. That was I've told you, Rabbi Foreman, who we've learned a lot of his Torah. He has this whole Aleph Beta thing which has a podcast. So this was in the podcast from Aleph Beta. I don't know if that was Rabbi Foreman's insight or one of his students, but anyway, I thought that was brilliant. But back to our point. So we say that Abraham negotiates on behalf of the people of Sodom with the hope that the righteous, the tzaddikim that are there, will exert their influence over the Rishayim, over the wicked. going back to our passage from Sefer Devarim, we have the exact opposite, right? Shell, your question about which is worse. So if the driving force here is Stom, right, the description here is supposed to remind us of the opposite of Stom. Stom could have been saved if there were righteous people to assert their influence. The danger being described by Moshe is when there are wicked people who are going to assert their influence over the righteous, right? That's what the bad root is. That's what adding on to, right, whatever, from the thirsty to the dry to the wet, right? That's the concern. The concern is the influence that will be asserted over others. And that brings us to what, right, the timing of Parshat Nitzavim-Vayelech always coming right before or right in the midst of the Rosh Hashanah season, right, is all about A, accountability. Don't think that you're off the hook ever. But B, the power of what we can do, the power of the influence that we have. And just one more final point. This passage ends, and perhaps I extended it a little too much, but I think it's beautiful. This last verse, which again is a beautiful verse, but it's a little hard to understand. Hanis tarot l'Hashem Elokeinu, v'haniglot lanu levanenu adolam. That which is hidden are for God, but that which is revealed is for us and for our children. So perhaps we might read that as saying, someone has thoughts of not buying into the truth of Torah. Someone has thoughts about whatever temptations, whatever their vices are. That's between them and Hashem. But if it's nigle, if it's revealed to everyone, so that's something that we have to be concerned about. That's something which may have influence over us. That's something we have to speak out against. That's something that we have to take some responsibility for. Right? Not only taking responsibility to try to get the sinner to prove their way, but also to speak out. It's now on us. We have to make sure that we and our children and our community won't be negatively influenced. So sometimes we protest, not because our protests are going to make any difference to whatever action we're protesting against, right? There's a war being fought, don't agree with the war. Chances are that the president or the king, whatever, is not going to say, oh, I see that Elliot is out there protesting, I better stop. But if I go out there and protest because I think something is wrong and immoral, so at least I'm making that statement and letting others know what I believe, what I think. And so as we really are beginning to focus very strongly on our tshuva, our preparation for Rosh Hashanah, for Yom Kippur, it's this idea of the tremendous influence that we can wield over others, both for the good and for the bad. And the idea that we're all being held accountable in our own right. And so I think that that's one of the messages that's being really driven home here in a powerful way. Again, you read the passage and it all just seems to flow without ever really thinking, what is the connection with Stom and what Moshe is describing here? But I think if we take the time to delve into it, it really gives us a very powerful, meaningful, and I hope useful message as we enter into Shabbos, the last Shabbos of this year, 5783, and prepare for Rosh Hashanah coming up. Any final thoughts?
Nice job.
All right, thank you. Left them speechless. So looking forward to seeing everyone on Shabbos. And Saturday night is Slichot, and then we'll start getting ready in earnest. Next week, I don't know if we're going to do a Parsha shir next week. So first of all, there's not really a Parsha because Rosh Hashanah is over Shabbos. But I'll be busy preparing, as I imagine many of us will be as well. Stay tuned. If something quickly comes to me, well, maybe, but we'll probably hold off on the share from next week. But that will be confirmed a bit later.
What time is Slichos?
Slichos is at 10 o'clock Saturday night. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.